Daf Kuf He Amud Aleph on the bottom. Tanur last two words. Tanur Alu Be'ilan Shekohora. Right, so we mentioned Rabbi and I, so now we're going to continue with the random halacha from him. If a tahor person and a zav, a guy who's tameh, because of an emission that comes out of him, they climbed on a weak tree, and therefore the weight was balanced by both of them, like leaning on him, considered. Ubsocha shekohara, or a weak branch on a strong tree. Tameh. Tahor person becomes tameh because as if they're supported by a tameh person. So the Gemara says, "Hey, chidami ilan shekohara was considered a weak tree. A tree that's trunk is not able to carve out a quarter of a cub, very thin trunk. Was considered a weak branch. A branch so thin that you can keep it inside your fist and you can't see it. If someone's walking in the Bet Pras is a graveyard that has been plowed over, or a grave that plowed over, you don't know where the bones are. If there's on top of the stones that will move like pebbles, and therefore you might be stepping on bones, they don't even know it. Or if you're riding on top of a person or an animal that's a weak tameh, you're considered tameh. Was considered a weak man. Anybody whose knees are knocking together when someone's riding on him. Yani, the guy's knees are buckling. Was considered a weak person, animal. Any animal that defecates itself when someone's riding on it because it's weak. So we see that these also similar concepts that if you're on top of something that is not able to support you, you have direct contact with the thing beneath you. For tefillin, what's considered carrying something for kabin. So what's going on? The tefillah he was considered for tefillah. Someone's carrying something on his shoulder. Now it's time to pray. If it's less than 4 kabin, he can swing it behind him and pray. It's not right to have it in front of him, and because doesn't weigh 4 kabin, it won't interfere with his kavanah. If it's more than 4, play is put on the floor and then pray. Tefillin what's considered for tefillin? Tanya, Hayano Sim carrying something on his head. And he's also wearing tefillin. If it's tefillin being crushed by it, you can't do that. But if it's not, it's mutar. What type of burden, what type of things is he carrying? It's referring to 4 kabin. That is what we're discussing. Tanar Yahya, if someone's taking out something garbage or something and he's using his head to support it. He's also wearing tefillin at the same time, which is a bizayon. He should not move the tefillin to the side of his head. Rather, he should not put it on his waist. Because that is not disrespectful to it. What should he do? He should tie them to his arm as well with the tefillin shayad. Even the straps of the tefillin, you cannot be placed on the head where there is a tefillin. Meaning, you can't carry the wrapper, the kuracha on top of your head, even if you're wearing tefillin. Bekama was considered a burden for tefillin. Even something as light as a quarter of a liter of bolita, which is something very light. Okay, I'm gonna read that. My kispa b'kli. What kind of measurement? The Mishnah said, what kind of measurements is a pile that's considered not enough for another renewal of a lease for the next year of a sharecropper? He says, I don't like the first opinion gave an example of a pile. He says, no, I'd rather just not enough to consider plowing the field again. That's considered enough to continue working there. The kamag significantly, what's that amount? 4 se'av of produce seed that usually produces a core. That's enough to restart the next season. Rabbi Amir said though, shmonatz in the core, 8 se'av for a core. And now they're not arguing. In Rabbi Yochanan's years, the land was more fertile, therefore you only needed 4 se'av seed to produce a full core. During Rabbi Ami, land was weaker and therefore needed 8 sa'as to produce the core. If you had like it are pieces of grain that had fallen. You had to leave there. Now, what happened if wheat was blown on top of it by wind? Now you don't know what's considered like it that you have to give to the poor people or not. We estimate how much leket you would know give, but not you have to give that to the poor. You give to the poor the amount that usually falls, right? There's more of a specific number. What's that number? Every cord you get 4 cups. Hold up. That leket, is that a per cord of seed planted or per cord of produce that's produced? And another question, and how is it planted? Is it planted by hand, which is more detailed, or by an ox machine that while the ox is walking it spills out? That's less detailed. So, like, what kind of formula we're dealing with? Four calves like it per cord of seed. Now, the second question, what type of planting, hand or oxen? Teku. Next Mishnah. Someone leased a friend from a field from his friend. Locusts ate it up or it got destroyed by the wind, like wind blasted, as they call it. It's considered a general tragedy, general act of God. That he can deduct it from his rental, he can expense it. But if it's not a general issue, you can't deduct it, you have to pay full price. So Rabbi says, if you lease the field for money, no matter what happens, you don't deduct it because you already paid and there's no deduction anymore. Was considered general tragedy, where most of the valley in this field was found destroyed by the wind blasted. The 4 fields alongside surrounding this leased field also got hit, right? That shows that it was like a heavy attack. Ula says, they asked the question, if one row of fruits along the field was destroyed, what's the halacha, right? So according to Ula said that for a surrounding, what if one row only got hit across the board? What if only one row along the field did not get attacked? Is that still considered a general tragedy? Afsika beremai. What if there was empty fields in between the other fields? So you said the 4 fields around it. What if there was the 4 fields around there didn't have anything grown, but the fields after that got destroyed? Is that considered like the same thing, or it's like that's considered like a separation, and therefore it's not considered tragedy? Aspastamai. What if fields had aspasta type of crops, cheap crops that were different in between the different fields? Does that change anything? So therefore, if those fields didn't get destroyed, maybe it's not considered tragedy, or maybe it is considered tragedy because we don't count those. What if the fields that did not get damaged were a different type of fruits than the one that did get damaged? And if it doesn't make a difference that there's a different type of fruits, is wheat and barley considered different? Where it says kolam kulam bishtafon bishlo. Everybody says that if the whole and next question, if the whole world got hit by a wind blast, but this field got hit by a different type of disease, like the yellowing of the crops because of lack of rain. Inami. Kolam kula biyarakum bishlo defon. Or let's say the whole world got yellowed out and his field got wind blasted. Is that considered general calamity, general issue? Or maybe it's not because his was different than the rest of the world. Take it. Amar there is the landowner told the tenant to plant the field with wheat. But he planted barley. And most of the fields in the valley became wind blasted. And the barley plants also became wind blasted. So, what's the halacha? Do we say the farmer can tell the landowner, it doesn't make a difference that I didn't listen to you and planted barley, because even if I did wheat, it would have gotten destroyed. Maybe the owner can tell him, if you planted with wheat, the pasuk would have helped me because Hashem will make your plan succeed. So I was praying for wheat, and therefore, because it was barley, my tefillah were answered because of you. But if you did do what I said, I would have been answered, and therefore it's your fault. The answer is it's true. The owner can claim on him. I could have relied on the pasuk. Okay. Let's say all the field of the owner got wind blasted, and this field also became wind blasted. But most of the valley, the rest of the people, did not get blasted. Since the other people in the valley did not get uh, this attack, therefore you don't deduct it because it's not considered a general tragedy. Or maybe because all the owners got hit. The farmer, the least tenants could tell him, this is considered your problem, your bad luck. Because we see that your fields got attacked. I mean, your bad luck. And so we say that the owner can tell him, with my bad luck, I still would have had something left. Because the Pasuk says, you'll be left with a few out of a lot. So the Pasuk saying that if a person gets punished by Hashem, he'll have a little bit left. But the fact that he got completely destroyed means it was the tenant's bad luck, not the landowner's bad luck. If all the fields of the tenant got destroyed, and the valley ones, most of the valley ones got destroyed, and the least field also became destroyed. We say, maybe since most of the valley got hit, therefore you can deduct it. Or maybe since all the owners got destroyed, the owner can tell him, this is your bad luck. Oh, your fields got destroyed. Gemara says, the owner can't tell him that this is your bad luck. Wait, so wait a second. How come we're saying it this way that you can blame the guy? But we said earlier, we said there's something should have been left over. The pasuk says, where it says no, that's not good by the tenant because the owner tells him, had you been worthy to get a leftover, they would have been left over to your fields, not your least fields. Yes, if this tefillah, this pasuk means that your own stuff will be left over, but not the fields that you've been renting. Next, and therefore you still have mitzvah. Aitan shinat shitafon virakon of the year of wind blasting or the yellowing of the crops. Osh ve'ita was shemitah. Osh ayu shanim kishne eliyahu, or it was the years without rain, completely no rain for years, like the time of the Navi. Ena oleh min haminyan. Does not count in the years. What are we talking about? So if a person has a Sideh Huzah, which means a land that's been in their family heritage, and they sell it, after, I believe it's 2 years. Yes, 2 years. After 2 years, the buyer is required to sell it back to the guy who sold to him, the one whose family owned it, upon request. So the guy says, hey, I want to buy it back. He has to agree and give back to him at the price that was sold. We want to return the heirloom, the family field. So now we said this Mishnah says that if there was years of yellowing or wind blast or it was shemitah or there was bad no rain, it does not count to those 2 years, and you have to wait for a regular 2 years. Like Martha says, mentioned this wind blast, and we compare it to like the years of Eliyahu, like the drought with no rain. There's like the Eliyahu, they didn't know produce at all. Nothing grew because no rain. So to these wind blast mishnahs, the wind blast the mishnah is referring to case is referring to also no produce. About the ikad, but there is produce, salkale, it would count. And we don't say, and even if there's a little bit of produce, we say it counts, and therefore it doesn't make a difference if there was a general tragedy. We don't care about that. So how come our mishnah we do care? Where it says, different by the Pasuk says, the Pasuk specifically says that years of crop has to pass. And that means only when there's crops growing, which is unlike over here because it's Shavi'it or the Leon Navi or the complete wind blast, and it doesn't count because there's no crops. That's the case. The Shavi'it should count. Shemitah should count because why? Because there is produce elsewhere. And say Hutzlaretz. So how come there is Tivua, there is produce in the world? The Gemara said, no, Shemitah is different because that was the rule of the king. Hashem said, produce doesn't count this year, and therefore, for this as well, produce doesn't count. Let me ask if that's the case. The Shemitah year should not count in the time that it takes for a person to redeem his Sidei Achuzah from the Bet HaMikdash. Meaning, Sidei Achuzah, if you make your Sidei Achuzah, your family land, part of Hekdesh, you say this should be Hekdesh, then we say that the Bet HaMikdash can sell it to pay for general contracting and repairs in the Bet HaMikdash. However, they are sold at a specific rate, not based off the market price, but rather a certain piece. Every piece is divided by the 50 years before Yovel, how many ever years left, and a set price no matter what it is. So the Gemara says that that's the case, that the land of Shevi'it is not considered fruit producing, then it should not count in that calculation. It shouldn't be divided by 50. It should be divided by 43 because you're subtracting 7 Shemitah years. So how come it counts the Shemitah year? The Gemara says, it's true that the land is not eligible for fruits, but the land is still eligible to do whatever you want on it. If you want to use it to suntan, you want to lay down on it, you want to use it to, or the example of spreading fruits to dry, that's still eligible. And therefore, because the land is eligible as a usage, as a something, it's useful, that's why it still counts as part of the calculation.